Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm really excited to bring to you Augusto Vivaldi, right? I got it right?
It's close enough. In
My
I would
Spanish is
say
not great, so.
in Spanish I would say Augusto Valverde. In English I would say Augusto Valverde. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Well, really excited we were just chatting earlier, and I stumbled upon your on Amazon Prime and Global Child, and what really stuck out to me was like not only was because I think there's a lot of other travel shows out there, but I think the little nuggets of wisdom that you really like put in there, and it's interesting because it's not too much woo woo where like people take it and they're like, oh, this guy's weird, but it's enough that it makes you kind of think like, wow, like there's actually like some gold there, you know what I mean? Because I think there's certain people that are very like law of attraction that it might rub people the wrong way, that they might be like but then I feel like yours is like just enough where I was like, wow, like that actually really resonated with me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you and with your audience. For anyone who is listening to us now, I was telling you before we began how much I value people's time, and for me that you took the time to see all of our season one, it means a lot. And even for your listeners now, hopefully my future friends, the fact that they're listening in, hopefully they'll gain something from this conversation.
Yeah, and I'm very curious about, because I think a lot of people like think of it as like the dream life, right? Like what you do, I think a lot of people envy that, you know? It kind of reminds me of like Anthony Bourdain, right? So I'm curious as to what inspired you to start your own channel, because I do think there are a lot of people trying to do what you're doing, but maybe not with the inspiring life lessons. It's more like just about the food and more of like the main. I think a lot of people do more of like the mainstream stuff, whereas you try to go off the beaten path and more nature and more of the spirituality aspects of things.
Yeah. So I used to be a host for NBC Universal. I won a nationwide search initially for Univision, which is a very big Latin network. And then that was a talk show. So we literally had to go, and the whole point of that show was it would just criticize people. And it was horrible. Like I would go there and defend the people. And then my producers would get mad at me. Augusto, stop defending the people. Like more venom. They literally said this. True story. Like more venom, poison, attack. And I'm not sure this is the environment I want to spend my life in. And needless to say, they fired me a week later. I went to LA. I did the struggling actor thing for a while. And then I won another nationwide search for NBC. So I learned to do TV hosting there. But soon enough, I started getting a little bit bored with just, interviewing and the award shows. And it didn't seem to have purpose,
Mm.
um, at least not that resonated with me. And eventually, when I left NBC Universal, I began to travel the world, and I didn't set out to create a travel show initially, um, which is also a way in which sometimes I'm obviously, you'll find this out quickly. I'm a faith guy, as you know. I respect all worldviews. It doesn't mean they have to align with mine, but I do believe that God, or the higher power that you believe in,
Mm.
does help to nudge you in the right direction. And the way that happened for me was that my former boss at NBC said to me, if you're going to travel the world, why don't you film yourself as if you were a TV host?
Huh.
So I thought to myself, I'm like, well, I have a red carpet, I have studio shows, I've
Mm.
done a bunch of things, but I've never done travel. And as you say, I loved actually Anthony Bourdain. I used to love that show. Uh, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to film myself as a little snippet for my hosting reel.
Mm.
And when I began to speak to camera, one thing led to the next, and then I started filming my whole experiences and then editing it together. And pretty soon I knew I had something interesting on my hands.
Mm.
And then I just realized that whatever I was creating, I wanted to fill it with purpose.
Mm.
So for me, that meant just, like I thought to myself, how can I bring added value to people? And I realized that each place was teaching me a life lesson, and then we put that into the show.
And I think so. What are your thoughts on? Because I do think the what your like I think it doesn't necessarily resonate with like everything, right? I think like the mainstream, like what you said, more like criticizing, making fun of celebrities and other. I think from at least from what I see, like I feel like that tends to have like more like a global, like a lot more people watch that stuff, as opposed to like inspirational, like messaging, right? So I guess like where do you find that balance where you're still catering to an audience? Because I do think there's a niche for everything, right? So I guess I'm curious as to like what type of niche are you catering to?
I would say humanity.
Yeah.
and, no pun intended, but I do believe that there is, we have to tailor communication in a way that can actually reach people, the audiences we want. And I think for too long, even those of us who are expounding on spirituality or faith or encouragement or whatever it is,
Mm,
we tend to stick to the lingo
mm,
that our or the supposed niche audience would understand. So if I'm a psychologist, I'll speak in psychological terms, and then I'll drop them, and the people who are very well versed in that, they'll speak the same lingo.
mm,
If I'm a Christian guy, which I am, we say that sometimes we speak in Christianese because they'll say all these, like resurrection and the blood of the lamb and all this stuff that doesn't mean anything to anyone outside of that faith. And so what I decided to do is I said, listen, no matter what we believe in, there is so much more that we have in common than what sets us apart. So I realized that lessons can transcend all cultures and all religions, such as generosity and courage and empathy. These are all human traits that we should all learn. And unfortunately, a lot of media and just people who are, creating the entertainment are not including these, and then what do? Because it's not like they're explicitly teaching them in schools. And most of these lessons did used to come through kind of like the faith stories.
mm.
So you take out the faith stories and spirituality is not in schools. So how do kids learn about empathy? Right. So I just found these lessons and I made sure that they're clear enough and simple enough where anybody can enjoy it. And at the same time, you're not there for a university lesson and you're not there for a sermon. So it's just a fine little balance of hey, you're here to see a TV show, have fun, and if you can learn something, that's great.
Yeah, and I mean it looks like you put a lot of thought into the like the script writing as well, right? So I'm curious as to like, do you spend a lot of time like writing out what you're gonna say before? Like, do you practice it a lot? Because I see an episode, I'm like, that must take a really long time to produce, but I'm not sure like how long does it take to produce a typical episode in season one?
So season one, it's very. First of all, again, like I said, it's so cool that you watched it because where season one is to where we are now in season three, they're like gigantic leaps. And you actually saw our first episode of season three.
That was really good. Yeah, I noticed a big difference. I mean, it was one was good, but yeah, I mean, two is much better. If yeah, I didn't even think that was possible, but it is.
Thank you so much. It's, what it is though. I like to say it's the same soul. It's just we just have a higher production value,
Mm,
but the intent is the same. The purpose is the same, and now I have more of a team. Season one, I filmed, edited, wrote, directed, did everything myself.
wow.
So you can imagine the post production. It was a Herculean amount of effort, um, but I really think that it's been a blessing in disguise because
Mm,
I couldn't afford to really pay editors. And I've realized that truly, like, necessity is the mother of invention. There's so many times where, just for people of faith, where we think, like, why do you make this so difficult, God? And it's not that he's making it difficult for the sake of making it difficult. He's trying to get us to develop, to grow, and it's always for a higher purpose.
mm,
So what happened for me was that I ended up having to learn how to edit. And it turns out I had a gift for editing
mm.
that I would have never discovered if I could afford to just pay an editor. And
Wow.
the whole process of the show, even the selling of the show, I ended up having to go to Cannes every channel said no. Of course, my manager dropped me, my agent dropped me, my girlfriend left me. Like it was the typical story. Like nobody believed in it. Like 2 years I didn't make money, and like even people would call me and they would tell me like, go get a job, and I would tell them I'm doing the job of like 7 people,
Huh.
and that's really where you really do have to pray and listen to that inner voice, and that tells you, to keep going. And I really do think that when there's a specific path or something we're supposed to achieve, it might look really dark at some moments.
Mhm.
It's, anybody who's achieved something great will tell you that they went through moments of doubt where it looked super difficult. Um, but there will always be a door or some way in which you can keep going. And that kept happening for me. And but yeah, when I did season 1, I would film it all myself. Let's say that would take, I don't know, 7 days, 7 to 12 days, depending on where I was filming. And then to come home, go through all the footage, maybe like 10 hours of footage, edit it all together. It would take me like a good 2 weeks of work, nonstop, like a good 12 hours a day.
Wow.
And then the writing, I this is actually just being truthful. My process would be, I would arrive at a place and I would pray, like,
Mm.
God, what am I supposed to learn here? And sometimes I feel like this inner voice would just say a word, like, you know, understanding, empathy. And sometimes I wouldn't hear anything, but I would interview people and everybody started giving me the same answer.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I would ask, where did this happen a lot? In Greece. In Greece, which you'll see in season 2, I would ask people like, what makes you the most proud of being Greek?
Hmm.
And they would say, generosity, philoxenia, generosity, and just all kinds of people. And so then I'm like, the theme here is generosity.
Oh, that's smart.
you
Yeah.
know and so once I discovered the theme, then I knew to ask that question, right? So then I would go, hey, what does generosity mean to you? And so now I began to build an episode, and I started being on a lookout on moments of generosity or this or that. And
Uh,
then back in the editing side of it, editing is like cooking for the viewers or the listeners that don't know. You go out, and when you film things, it's like you're going to the supermarket.
mhm.
So you don't always have the best fish one specific day, but like you go out and you go to the supermarket, you get the best ingredients possible, and then your editing is like you're cooking. And obviously the better the ingredients, the better the meal is going to be. But a lot of the magic does happen in the kitchen, right? In the editing room. And right there, what I do is I would always get on my knees and pray. And I would just tell God, I said, God, please help me to create something that will encourage people, bless people. And I ask you to work through me, because if this is just done in my own skill and power, it's going to suck. So please help me. And then I would get up and just start working. And that's it. That's how we came up with the shows. And thank God they've resonated with some people.
That's interesting because I guess like why did it not resonate? Because it sounds like I mean I feel like every billionaire says a similar story, right? It's like, J.K. Rowling,
Uh-huh.
a lot of these like people that are extremely wealthy now, sort of like yeah, with like the Colonel Sanders with KFC, right? It's like 300 times. So I'm curious as to why it wouldn't resonate with people. Did people say like, "Oh, what makes you different than all the other travel shows?" Like, what was the criticism?
I I think back then for season 1, what happened was that the show was in a format that they weren't used to.
Um,
If you're a TV executive, you think a TV show should look like this, right? And this one looks a little different because it looks like he filmed it himself. And I've some executives, friends of mine, told me that most television executives, they make fear-based decisions. So they're not trying to innovate. They're not trying to like bring amazing things to their audiences.
hmm.
They're mostly trying to not to lose their job because there's a big turnaround. So they take very little risks in choosing new things. Um, I think that in life, no matter what you do, your dream is going to get tested. It's part of the process of faith. If there's a scripture that says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. And faith is like believing in something that you cannot see, touch, smell with your senses, whatever it is. So I really do think that a dream, the greatest dreams and the greatest stories of success were actually people who had a dream. It looked impossible. And then they went and they went and they went through it. And it's just, it's very satisfying, like kind of on the other side when it starts materializing. But it's really challenging when you're in the middle of it.
Hmm. And so I saw that this released. So like, how long does it take until you're finally profitable? Because it sounds like that's like way, way, way later. Are you even profitable now? I'm curious.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was that season one, the thing with television, it always has a turnaround of from you when you begin production to when you actually see money of at least a year, at least, because you have to make it, edit it, create it, and then sell it and then deliver it. So for season one specifically, once everybody said no, I didn't know what to do, really. And the same network executive, my friend Hannah, she said to me, "Hey, listen, the place where the business of television happens is this place called MIPCOM, which happens in Cannes in October." So she said, "You should go sell your show there." I'm like, you know what? Why not at this point? So I made a little trailer and I bought a ticket to MIPCOM. And when you buy a ticket to this place, they give you access in a database to everyone who's attending.
Oh.
So I sent 3,000 emails. I wrote every single person attending the thing. And I sent them like this trailer I had made talking about my show. And out of those 3,000 emails, I got like 30 replies, 10 like polite declines, and then 20 meetings. And from all those meetings, eventually I met this distribution company from Spain. And they said to me, distribution companies, for those who don't know, they basically rep your content. They're like the sales agent. They'll say, look, I'll grab your TV show, I'll sell it for you. And if I sell it, I'll take 30%. That's what distribution companies do. So I found one from Spain. And I said to them, I said, listen, I fly on this airline called Iberia. It's like the number one in Spain.
Yeah.
And they do carry 85 million passengers a year. And I said, when I fly on Iberia, I see your shows, and there's one travel show on there. And I don't know how good my show is, but it's better than that one. that's all I know. And I said, if you show it to Iberia, Iberia will buy my show. And if you're able to do that, I will give you the representation with all the airlines. And they said yes. And then like a month later, I was in my gym in Miami, not knowing what to do, like praying, working out, doing everything in my power, trying to stay positive. And then I got their message and they said, Augusto, congratulations, Iberia wants to buy your show. But so does Delta and British Airways and LATAM and Royal Jordanian and Thai Airways and like all these airlines.
Huh.
And we became the first travel show to launch on 10 airlines that carried over 500 million passengers.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations. It sounded like it really tested your faith. And I'm curious, like, do you know exactly how many views? Because I'm sure, is it hard to measure, like when it's on the airplane? Do they measure that?
Exactly. That is always the most difficult thing. We know our reach already passed 1 billion airline passengers that it's been in front of. If we take it to a 1% viewership,
Yeah.
then it's almost like 100 million. And
Huh.
so once that happened, then for season 2, which you'll see it, when it comes out shortly, all the luxury hotels wanted to be on the airlines. So suddenly I went from like a selfie stick and just staying at my buddy's couch to like all the top 5-star resorts in the world,
Oh, okay.
like trying to outdo each other. Because
Huh.
if you pay for a 5-star resort, let's say in India or wherever, they also assume that you have money to go do
Uh,
activity,
yeah.
right? So then they have helicopter rides and like meetings with the chef and like dog sledding and like helicopter, like, and so these hotels began to give us the most extraordinary experiences
Hmm.
And then I just did the same kind of thing, except like now our production value for each show was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Uh,
Um, and it just enabled me to create something even more beautiful. And then we started getting co-hosts, which you began to see towards the end of the first season, right? Like in Russia or San Francisco,
hmm.
where I would bring people on the journey with me.
Yeah. Huh.
And so now we're bringing all these like uh, beauty queens and Miss Costa Rica and NBC actresses and people that they're the pretty big deals
Mm.
as like how much it takes to like hire them.
Yeah.
They will come with us because we're now giving back.
Uh,
That's the new thing that I don't know if you noticed, but like now like we do charity everywhere we go.
interesting. And do you think that when that happens, like, because I do think there's some audiences that prefer the more like just on your own, and it's like, but then when it becomes more of like a Hollywood production, I think
Mhm.
sometimes people think that quote unquote you're like selling out, right? So I guess like, and I don't think it's possible to make everyone happy. I think that's
Exactly.
it's like, but it is interesting. I did notice a difference between like just the first episode of the second season versus the first season.
Yeah,
Like for preference, I mean, I'm sure you're happy that like you have a team now, right?
yeah, of course.
That's so
So the major thing is I knew that what we were doing in season one was not sustainable. I
uh,
mean, the level of work and I didn't really want to live like that either. It's just, I mean, to give you context, most TV shows, like the Anthony Bourdains or whatever, they have like a $200,000 budget
yeah,
per episode, and that's not even anybody getting like Anthony getting paid. That was just three or four camera people, producers lining up the activities, getting the permits, the whole 9 yards. So you
yeah.
have a team of almost 6 or 7 people that would travel with a host, film this thing called B-roll, which is all those cool shots that fill out the things. But
Mhm.
when it's just you, that means you film nonstop all day, everything.
Yeah.
Crazy. And like it was fun, but that's never really what I wanted to do. And more importantly, um, is that I wasn't been able to have the impact that I wanted to have.
Okay.
Let me explain, because in season 2 and season 3 and moving forward, now we do charity, actual tangible charity everywhere we go.
Wow.
So the life lesson is still there, but now we're actually even changing people's lives. So that is where I wanted to get the show. And I think the more we go down that road and it gets bigger, uh, maybe this time we were able to feed a leper colony in India that had 60 people. You'll see in the India episode,
Mhm.
and we gave them food for an entire year. Like we paid for all their meals for a whole year.
Wow.
So those are 60 lepers that now get to eat because we went to film, and that's actual practical, tangible impact.
Mm.
Um, and and then obviously I think as the show grows, maybe now we'll be able to help even thousands.
Wow, that's amazing. Was that part of your vision, like from the get-go? Like you wanted to have that social impact, like that level, the charity and the foundation, even before you started your company? Like, did you know you wanted to do all that?
I know I wanted to do good, and I say that in air quotes for those who are just listening to us. um, i just I just didn't have the most clear vision on what that good meant.
Mm.
So at the beginning, the good that I saw that I could do was to uplift through the life lessons, bring joy, show the best of cultures. So I did what I could with that. Then I think as we began to have resources and more opportunities, then I said, what more good can I do, or how can I be more impactful? And I think once I saw the first charitable acts, it just felt right, and something in me said, that's it. And then once I understood, I'm like, so that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Huh.
I think a lot of life is like that. You'll do something, and then it's like a eureka moment.
Wow.
And what's so ironic now is that we've been blessed to be on. We were in Forbes magazine. Yahoo Finance is one of the top 10 most important media platforms in the world.
Mhm.
They gave us an 8-minute interview at noon worldwide talking about travel with purpose. And
Huh.
they actually coined the phrase for us. So the
Uh,
show, the one you saw, our slogan in season 1 was experience your world.
right.
And after we did the Yahoo Finance piece, when they introduced us, they said, Augusto Valverde, Global Child, Amazon's new travel show, Travel with Purpose. I'm like, oh, travel with purpose.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's what we're about. And so ever since that moment, our slogan for season 2, season 3, moving forward is travel with purpose.
Wow. That's really inspiring. And so obviously, so I'm curious, like when you were selling your show, did that take like over a year, like couple years? Like how long did that whole process take?
Once we had something to sell, which is, let's say, once we had like 7 or 8 episodes, we were still finishing the rest of season 1. It took a good like 8 months to close that sale. And the first sale was the airline, then the largest network in the Philippines. Just random, but it's great. There's like one major network, and I guess we're rock stars in the Philippines, which is great.
Wow.
um, they bought it. A 4K network bought it. And now actually, I don't think you know this, but we finished season 2. We have 10 episodes, and we're negotiating with different platforms.
Wow.
Um, and I'm actually finishing writing a book for a company called Simon Schuster.
Oh yeah.
It's one of the largest.
Yeah.
It's one of the largest publishing houses in New York, and they're part of the Viacom family, which also owns CBS Plus and Paramount and all these networks. So I will let you know once we finalize a deal. But I have, I really feel in my heart that we're about to go mainstream in a major way, especially after this Corona, pandemic. I was telling these people that, I think the people of light are most useful when the world gets dark,
Hmm.
and and what people tend to want what they can't have. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
And for the next few months or the foreseeable future, it's like people love traveling. They just won't necessarily be able to travel as they did before initially.
Right.
And our show is, it's all travel, it's all encouragement, it's all giving back, and we're in a perfect place to actually be a blessing to the world, so that at least people can travel vicariously through us. They can give through us. We can showcase the best of other nations until everything returns to normalcy.
I love it. I know it is interesting because like I feel like your show caters to so many different types of people because I do think there's a subset of people that like want to give back more, want to do charity work, want to do but don't know how. Sometimes they're kind of just like they'll donate to like their whatever it is like every one-offs, right? But not so I think that's helpful. And then there's people who like me who like have traveled to a few different countries but not to the level, so it's kind of like, all right, I'm definitely going to add that onto my bucket list, and then I'm looking up prices to see how much it costs and stuff like that, right? So I do think like you cater to like the perfect, and then there's like people that are just really like positive messaging that it's like they consume it because they're like, hey, this is helping me manifest my goals, my dreams. So I do think you do cater to a lot of different audiences, and then there, like you said, there's still like the majority of like America or just the world that just doesn't have the means and the funds to travel, but maybe they do like their yearly or biannual travels. And then that gives them an idea of like, oh, maybe I should add, Australia or Sydney or whatever it is to my list. Right. So it's interesting that you check the boxes for all the different categories.
And I think the evolution, more than a travel show, we're creating a travel brand of traveling with purpose. So we're starting to sell, before this happened, we were starting to sell our Global Child travel packages. So
Mhm.
people could actually go do all the activities they see on the show, including the charitable component.
Yeah.
And we have a nonprofit called the Big Foundation. It's a 501c3, tax deductible, and the whole premise of that is that it's all world religions working together to help people around the world. And I'm a Christian guy. I follow Jesus. I used to be this crazy club promoter. Um, and I had a near death experience, and then I found my faith, and then I became a jail chaplain. So I've been doing volunteering in prisons for years. I got a degree in theology, but because I didn't come from like a faith-based background, I've read like all the Deepak Chopra stuff and Eckhart Tolle and the Power of Now, and I understand how people who are searching in their faith and their spirituality,
Mm.
it's an ongoing process. All of life is learning, and it doesn't mean that we all necessarily arrive to the same conclusion, but there should be growth and impact, right? um, so through that foundation, we invite people of all world religions. So I invited my friends of Qatar, my Muslim friends, and they were able to donate to my Hindu brothers in India. And then my Christian friends came with me to Africa, and we did a medical mission trip with 40 doctors and nurses that saw 3,000 patients that that had never seen a Western doctor. And so I think there's in this new world, and I'm calling it new because I don't think we'll be able to go back to exactly the way things were. Not that they'll be worse. There's always crisis is always opportunity for improvement.
Mm.
And I think a lot of the ways in which humanity thought as a whole, I think have to be just kind of readdressed and reevaluated. And hopefully the function of the show, the foundation, is to create those bridges and those links of unity where, hey, listen, overall, you're human. And instead of this like dichotomy of division, like you versus me, like it's we, right? We, humanity, have to get past this together, you know?
I think that's a good point. I do think one of the positives, like you said, every crisis there comes an opportunity. I do feel that we're more connected than ever, right? Because I do think there's so much separation. It's like the US versus like Mexico, or like, you know what I mean? Or like, Canadians are different from the Americans. But I do think this is actually helping us come together, because I do notice there like people are actually caring. Like people have that live way far away in California are like calling me in New York. They're like, "Are you all right in New York City?" And that never like happens, right? It's like my dad, who he's never called me in like 14 years, like calls me and it's like, "Hey, is everything okay in New York?" I'm like there's like a global me. It's interesting to see that. But
That's awesome. Speaking of family, just a quick side note. I don't know if you knew this, but I hosted the Miss New York beauty pageant.
yeah, yeah,
So I have a tie to the city, and
uh,
um, my sister. I have three sisters. One of them just gave birth in the middle of the Corona like pandemic, like in Manhattan.
scary.
And thank God the baby's fine. They're back home. So um, I announced that the healthcare workers to me are so heroic, and they're under so much stress that when this thing is over, I'm bringing two health workers with me on a trip as part of Global Child, so they can have a 5-star all paid experience. So hopefully, like we'll choose a couple of people who really earned it.
That's amazing that you're pledging to do that. I do think it's interesting because so I was pre-med in college, and a lot of my friends are all doctors now, right? And then I'll do like Zoom calls just to, for us to all kind of like hang out and stuff like that. And I do think they a lot of people, like I feel like they have a bigger sense of purpose, if anything, right? Because before, like they would joke, and then my friends would be like, yeah, like the biggest deal was like, like allergies, right? Like I felt like I was getting paid that a lot of money to just deal with allergies. But now it's like, I feel like they have a bigger sense of purpose because of what's going on. So,
I mean, it's interesting that you say that in the medical field, but I would extrapolate that just to the world in general, because you see, a lot of people. I wrote a chapter about how to deal with fear in the book, and what I'm saying is that um, fear is not the main enemy. Because death is not the main enemy. In a long enough timeline, everybody's survival rate drops to zero.
mhm. True.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
So the fact that that something that is inevitable for every single human that we know, it shouldn't paralyze us. Now, what happens is that when we are faced with that reality, it really challenges everything that we are doing with the time we've been given with our life.
Yeah.
And we need to address the major things of life, which is like, hey, listen, like, is my soul okay? Like, why am I here? Am I doing what I'm supposed to? Like, is there more I could do? Like, am I dedicated my life to things that matter? Like, am I wasting my time? And these kind of thoughts, unless you're very aware and spiritually with eyes open, they make us very uncomfortable. That they're not typically conversations that we're comfortable with, because we all have a comfort zone, and no matter who you are, that comfort zone has been shaken, and the reality of the finality and the temporary nature of life is just, it's so in front of us, right? That it makes us question, like, all of the safety nets that we thought we had, and it's not to produce fear. It's just like, safety is an illusion. Like we like to feel safe, but it's like, where are you getting your safety? Like, every time you get in a car, like, the earth is like going at, like, just orbiting around the sun, and it's just like one asteroid would like end life. It's just like, there's really no safety. You know what I mean? And and so I just say this, that I would invite all of our listeners to not be afraid to ask themselves the big questions, because um, this is obviously a horrible situation. There's a lot of stress, a lot of loss of life. It's not a good thing at all. But good things can come out of bad situations, and they usually come through the form of growth and change. So instead of trying so hard to go back to the way it used to be, perhaps I just invite everybody to question, like, how could our lives be better, and are we actually using them for what they were meant?
Wow, so many deep philosophical questions. I'm curious, like, is it because you had the near death experience that you started pondering all these things? Like, what? Because I feel like there's always like a pivotal moment. It sounded like one was you realized like you wanted to have more purpose because your show when you were hosting you were just criticizing people.
Yeah.
Was there something else other? Was it that near death experience that really caused you to like take action?
Yeah, so I always I grew up with faith, where I always just believed that there was a God. It wasn't difficult for me. I would just look at the stars and stuff like that. And my dad died when I was 2 years old. So when I wanted to have a conversation with my dad, I was just kind of pray. And praying is conversation. It's just basically you're talking to God. It's not a like a Harry Potter series of abracadabra words. It's just literally an honest, sincere conversation with your creator. So that was easy for me. And then when I kind of grew up, then I fell into a lot of these like the traps that a lot of us fall into. So since I was a number one club promoter, it was all girls, alcohol, just like hooking up with this girl, hooking up with that girl. Obviously, the inevitable, like, oh, I'm watching like naked people on the screen. Like, that's not good for me, but I don't care. And so I had a lot of dysfunction. And the cliff notes of it was that I had a girlfriend that I was cheating on, which in life, every choice we make is a seed we plant. And sometimes we think we're getting away with it, but it's just because that seed hasn't really
Wow.
sprung off the ground. And so we're like, haha, I can do more of this. And it's like, no, it's not harvest yet. And when I got that harvest of all those selfish choices, it was really, really bad. And long story short, two doctors told me that they thought I had AIDS. Imagine.
Holy shit.
And talk about a sobering moment for a guy that was just like crazy and just living the wild life.
Yeah.
I had never really like, I didn't know what to do. And I went to this church that was open, and there was nobody there. And I just fell to my knees crying, because I, I really felt like I had actually put my girlfriend's life in jeopardy by my own stupidity. You know what I mean? Because if I had it, then I'd given it to my girlfriend. So I went to this church, I fell on my knees, and I just prayed out loud. And I said to God, I said, God, I deserve to die for the things that I've done. right? Like you've given me warnings, like I deserve to die. But this girl, I said, she's innocent. She's done nothing at all. I said, please take my life, but don't take hers. And
Wow.
this is going to sound crazy to the audience, but whatever, it is what it is. That's how I experienced it. I heard an audible voice, external, real,
Yeah.
and the voice just said to me, what are you going to do for me? And it was like a very, like a stern father.
Wow.
And I knew what he wanted me to promise. And what's funny is I hesitated because I'm like, man, if I promise this, I can't do it anymore. And
Wow.
I was there. I'm like, but I came to my senses. I said, I'm dying. I'm killing an innocent woman. Like, if I'm not going to do this now, I'm never going to change. And I just promised. I said, God, if you heal us both, I promise you, I'll never cheat on a woman for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And I felt this peace come over me. I stopped crying. I opened up a random Bible, which I'd never read, put my finger on a page, and on my finger it said, for his mercy, thou shalt be healed. I was
Wow.
like, yes, yes. And so like 3 days later, everything disappeared from my body. The doctors couldn't explain it.
What?
And oh my God. And I really I'm like, this is real. So I went to a cool modern church, now it's like a hip thing, like Justin Bieber and Kanye West and like all these guys. But it's cool. I went there because all I knew was like my Catholic church. And there's just for our audience, it's not about the church. It's you can learn math at Yale or you can learn math at Miami-Dade Community College. It's still math. It's just some schools are teach you better than others or are more easy to understand. But the subject matter is the same. God's the same. And and I just started learning a ton. I started reading for myself. I said, for all the opinions of all these weird people that I see on TV or the angry people or the judgmental or hateful people, when I read this book, Jesus just like loved everyone.
Mm.
He's like, don't judge or you'll be judged. Like, love your neighbor, like love your enemies. And like, he was just a really nice and kind guy. And when I started living my life like that, just, it really started a spiritual transformation for me. I read some really cool books that I recommend. One of them is The Purpose Driven Life,
Okay.
Rick Warren. The Purpose Driven Life is actually the best selling soft cover book in history
Wow.
of the world. So it's really solid. And it really I just kept with that transformation. And then I started studying theology and I really I just found at the end of the day that, God is a God of love. And there were answers to a lot of the hard questions that I had scientifically, philosophically. And it's for a longer conversation, but it's all there. If you really want to know the truth, like, God's not hiding. He's just waiting for us to be willing to see the truth and be open to it. And the good news is it's got nothing to do with a religion or signing up for a building or anything like that. It's personal. Like you and I are having a personal relationship right now. This is great. We get to talk. That's it. God just wants you to love people and he wants to do life with you. It's not because you're good or you're bad. It's not about that. It's just relational. And there's so many people, I even bet people that are listening now, that they have really good relationships with God. They just don't even know it. They
Mm.
have a voice that's always told them, like, do this, don't do that. They try to love people and they wouldn't subscribe, let's say, to a specific religion, but it doesn't mean they don't have a relationship. And so I just want to encourage them that it's okay to search, like the weird wacko people, that never has to be you.
It's interesting hearing you say this. So I'm actually someone who, at one point, I would consider myself like an atheist. So I was actually one of those people that was like, yeah, like these people are crazy, because I'm like very scientific and I was like into like string theory and like, like very
No,
nerdy.
of course, I love that. Yeah.
And then it's interesting, like I feel like the older I get, the more like when I'm on the mountains or when I look at the stars or when I see like even walking around today, I just looked at flowers and just trees and there's overwhelming like connectedness. And I don't like call it God, I just call it like the universe or spirit or whatever. But I definitely notice it's like a spiritual connection, but I'm like totally like, oh, I'm not gonna admit that it's God, right? So it's
Yeah, yeah.
just
The implications of that are crazy, which is always fun. I think we all come at it in different ways. So
right.
like for me, I was very comfortable like having a God that I kind of created in my mind. So that God didn't mind, like he was always there to love me, he was there to help me, but he didn't mind if I cheated on my girlfriend, right? Because oh God, like, oh, he's just this nebulous thing out there. And you know, a lot of people end up kind of like creating a God or believing that God is what they want it to be, and that's not God. That's a magical genie that has nothing to do with reality. And on the other side, I think there's a people that, you know, they're afraid of the existence of God because what they've heard about God, whether it's because they had a really bad, like they had really bad parents or really abusive authorities, or they've come across some like hateful people that they really don't want to be like, that claim to have represent God, then they shy away from him, right?
Right.
And you know, God has a really big PR problem because for generations, most of the people that have represented him are really not living at all like him.
Mm.
Like I'll sum it up for you. So they came to Jesus, like the religious people of their time, and they said, okay, Jesus, we have like all these, we have 600, you know, commandments and all these laws and rules, and what's the most important? And then Jesus just said to them, listen, like, first is you will love the Lord thy God with all your soul, mind, and strength. And the second is like it. You will love your neighbor as you love yourself. This sums up the law and the prophets. Like this sums up the Bible. So if you ever meet somebody who claims to be a Christian and they're not loving people,
Uh,
they're not representing Christ.
hmm.
So whatever it is they're spewing, whatever like political agenda they're like doing, or whatever they're doing, that's got nothing to do with Christ. And that's actually one of the Ten Commandments, right? Don't use the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Don't call yourself something that you're not, right? Like if you're a follower, be a follower, right? And so I think that's up to us individually to be able to recognize the difference between, you know, somebody who's abusing and misusing a name and somebody who's actually living it.
That's an interesting point, actually, because I do think a lot of the people that have been the most kind, like the most kind people I know in the world, like including yourself,
Well,
are
thank
very, you know, like they do believe in God, right? So I do think there's like a lot of people where I'm like, wow, like you're like an amazing human being, right? And I see that. But I think too, you know, I do think that everyone kind of has their own journey, right? So some people might realize it much, much later. Like it seems like you realized it pretty early on relative to like the rest of your life. But I
you.
people eventually like realize like, oh shit, like if I don't like change, then you know what I mean? Like people have that realization eventually.
I think we all have a different moment, and that's why it's no matter, you know, what people believe. I think all of our jobs, whether we believe or not, is to love one another, right? Because love changes people, love helps people. Nobody ever changed because we criticize them so much or we attack them or we, you know, like that doesn't change people. And that's just kind of dark behavior. So I really think that even like a lot of like, you know, the term gospel, because we just passed Easter, gospel actually means good news, right? So let's just switch to English. Good news. The good news is very simple. It's that like, um, you know, God, I love this analogy of the computer. You and I are having a conversation, right?
Mhm.
But if I told you connect to the internet by yourself with no device, are you able to do it?
No.
No. You need an interface,
Right.
right? So God is so large, he's everywhere, created the universe, like, and so, but you still need an interface to connect. So God put skin on and bones to show you what he would look like as a human being. So you could have an interface to communicate with him. Because otherwise it'd be this nebulous concept that you would have no idea how to relate to. So he's like, no, I made you, I'll take your form, and this is what I did. Like I like hung out with like the messed up people and I love them and I didn't judge them. And then what he did was he said, listen, God is love. He's all these wonderful things if he's real, but he's also justice, right? Like I suck at math, but God also shows you who he is in mathematics. It's like x minus 1 equals x plus 1. Like a true equation balances itself out, right? That's like mathematical justice, right? That's a true equation. So God's justice does demand payment. Like he's not like the fairy queen, just like no, like actually like he does get mad at evil, right? But when he put skin on and walks amongst us, he said, listen, every human being makes mistakes, from Mother Teresa to Billy Graham to like everybody, right? So he said, I am the only being, because I'm fully God and fully man, that have never made a mistake. And I'm going to voluntarily give up my life for you, right? So he told that to his disciples for years. He went to the cross, suffered the most horrible of deaths. And then when he was done, like, he proved that he was divine by coming back. That's the whole point of the good news. And the good news is this, is that because he paid for all the punishment and justice that God required, we don't pay it anymore. So we never need to be afraid of God. Like, he loves you. Now he just like, he offers you a relationship and you don't earn it and you don't lose it by your behavior. That's the good news. Like, anybody can come. It's not like, oh, once I get my stuff together, or like, I've done all these messed up things. He's like, no, like, I already know. Like, I saw you before I even made you. I know you're human. You'll make mistakes. So just come over. And so I think that's the beautiful news. And I thank you for allowing me to share it. And I just want to invite people that no matter what their journey is, to keep searching, right? Like, I think if we search long enough, hopefully we'll find the truth, and then the truth will set us free.
Wow. Yeah, I certainly didn't expect talking about this, but I do think it's important, especially with what's going on right now. Like, even there's a purpose for this, right? And I mean, I'm seeing the purpose. Like, I've never called so many of my friends who I haven't spoken to, and I don't know how long, right? Just because like now it's like I'm more connected to myself, and I'm like, oh, right. While I'm like chasing fame, while I'm doing all these things, trying to make a lot of money or whatever, it's like at the end of the day, like, is that what's gonna make me happy, or is it like just having good relationships where I know that I can, like, just have a good time, right, and just be myself. So
And I would just say, we also have to be mindful what we're building our lives on.
mm,
What happened now, and one of the reasons why it's so traumatic, is that every human being worships something, like, whether you realize it or not, right? Go to a Patriots game on a Sunday and like, it used to be Tom Brady. I don't know who they're going to worship now. But if you go to a Beyonce concert, like, like, if you go, like, sometimes it's money at the stock exchange. It
mm,
can be, there's like, whatever you think about the most, dedicate your life to, that is what you worship, right? And what ended up happening with coronavirus is that all the false gods got shaken.
uh,
And suddenly people are like my career, oh my God, like, oh, my whole life was my career. Now it's gone. My stock market is gone. Like, my health, like, it's could be gone. Like, oh, like, my crazy, like, selfie, like, oh, look, I traveled the world. Like, that's gone. So with all this stuff gone,
yeah.
people are just left to ponder, like, what can I build my life on? And then I would just invite people to think, like, who gave you life?
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Actually, you know what? You kind of remind me. Like, do you know Scott Harrison, the guy who invented charity water?
No, but I've heard about him.
So he kind of had like a similar journey where he was the number one club promoter in New York City. He ended up using all that publicity and that media, like, to his salesmanship essentially, to raise so much money and build all these like thousands of wells in Africa. And because he realized, like, when he went to Africa and he used his photography skills, he started sending it out. He had a newsletter, and then all of his like rich and famous friends, like very influenced friends, start donating a lot of money. And then so I feel like you're kind of like doing a very similar thing as what he did.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, they've had a massive, massive impact. And I think at the end of the day, we all have a particular lane and a particular mission. And that's the other beautiful thing about faith. We realize that we're not in competition with each other.
Mm.
We're part of one family. We're part of one organism of light. And, we're here to journey together. So even, hopefully today we have a listener that maybe you and I don't know personally,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe the words were exactly for them. And this is how the world works. And so for me, now I know that personally, I'm going to count you as a friend. And anything you ever need from my side, please let me know, off air or whatever. Like, I'm always here. And I just, I thank you for going into the medicine field and for all the good that you guys do.
Yeah, well, thank you. This is so much. This was such a good platform. I know you'll continue to be very successful. I think you just have such positive energy and I think the mindset and just the connected, like the oneness, like you're very spiritual, right? And it's interesting because like on the surface, when people first turn on, they're like, oh, this guy's so lucky. He's like, looks good. He's with all these beautiful women, but at the core of it, like you can tell that like it's not just like external, right? Like there's like some substance. So I really appreciate this. This is like been such a insightful conversation. I'm sure
Well,
people will enjoy
yeah,
it.
thank you so much. And yeah, I'm here. So stay, for the people who want to follow our adventures, they can find us on social media. It's Global Child TV. It's all together, Global Child TV. They can see season 1 on Amazon Prime. And, if they check out our social media, we'll be announcing where season 2 airs eventually. And whoever's listening, if you have any questions, if you wanted any kind of advice, always reach out to us on social media as well, and I'm happy to answer.
Awesome. What method do you prefer for people to reach out to you on?
I think Instagram is the most useful, Global Child TV on Instagram. And also our website has a bunch of, they can see all the episodes. By the way, I'm going to give everybody a cheat code right now, everybody who's listening. If you go to globalchildtv.com, the password to see any of our season 2 episodes is all the same. It's gratitude is the key. All together, small cap. Gratitude is the key. With that password, you can see season 2 right now and even season 3 before it airs anywhere else in the world. So that's a cheat code just for all your listeners.
So season two, the full season is already out.
It's password protected on our website because we're negotiating with different buyers. But you can go, and if you click on our website on globalchildtv.com, you'll see click watch season 2, and then right there it says watch full episode with a password. So that's the password. Gratitude is the key. All together.
Well, thank you so much. Oh, and last thing, if someone does want to contribute to the big foundation, what's the best way, and in which ways can they contribute as well?
Yeah. So if they go to the website, there's more about the foundation right there. There's a link. There's a PayPal account. I think what we're going to do is usually if somebody wants to make a larger donation and they want it for a specific thing, let's say sex trafficking in Thailand, or if they want to help the Maasai, in Kenya, what they would do is they would just send me a message and be like, hey, listen, I'm gonna make this donation. I would like it to be used for this, and then I'll say yes, yes or no, or if what we're doing, and that's it, and that's how they get to partner with us.
Awesome. Well, that's really exciting. I'm sure there'll be many opportunities to collaborate, and I wish you the best of luck with all your endeavors. And can't wait to see you on the big screen, on mainstream. It sounds like you're really close to getting all the major networks. So
Yeah, me too. The world needs it, so it's in God's hands. We shall see.
the timing can't be any better. Like you said, it's like literally like the perfect time right now. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and it was fun. So thanks for everybody for listening, and then we'll talk soon.
okay, cheers. Bye.
Okay. Bye.